Good evening, Tuesday night crowd. It is music night. It is time to talk Duran Duran. Brian.
Yeah, Duran Duran. It's
Duran Duran.
Yeah, I've got the hair tonight though.
You just told me it was that's working under the truck hair. Let's get real now.
It is working under the truck hair. I was definitely being a mechanic today, so that's kind of a lie.
But we'll go through the first one. Sounded like you're good to go.
Yeah.
Tonight we're going to be talking Duran Duran. For those of you who have been following our music shows, every Tuesday night we talk music in some aspect, way, shape, or form. We did.
Hold on a second. That's my fault.
Oh.
Yeah, I forgot to mute the.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I didn't. I'm not. I had a problem last night. I could not get the Facebook feed. There's two ways to watch us tonight. If you are watching us on Facebook Live, yay, thank you. You're going to have a better video on YouTube, and I believe the feed is. I got to do a refresh. I believe I put the YouTube link on the top in the description of the Facebook Live, so you guys can watch it on Facebook, or if you want to pop over to YouTube and see it. Yes, we've got it right there, so you guys can see the better live feed. Gosh, there's a couple of different things I've got there. We're also on the YouTube there. That's where the chat's going to be. If you have questions and things, we're going to be answering the chats and things on YouTube or engaging there. So we got K-Singer, NW Premier Audio's there. Freedom Flicks is there. So thank you guys. Welcome to our Tuesday night music show.
Thanks for coming.
Duran Duran. Yes. Where did it start?
Birmingham, England. That's where it started. In a club. If you go like to, and let me just say before we get into this, I didn't study for this. I was busy. I had an emergency today with my daughter's vehicle, so I didn't get to dive into my notes like I normally do. So I'm going off the cuff. Just so you know, Birmingham, England, back in the late 70s or rather, Nick Rhodes was a DJ at a club. If you go to like downtown Birmingham, there's like this club district. And I've been there. It's pretty neat. During the BPM show, we've gone down there and hung out. I even stayed down there in a hotel in this little district. One particular club was a club that Nick was a DJ at, of all things. Nick Rhodes, who is the keyboard player of Duran Duran. And they put a band together. And they are mostly boys from Birmingham. However, Simon Le Bon is a child actor from London who they sourced in. And they needed a really hot guitar player. The closest one they could find was, I believe it's Leeds, and that would be Andy Taylor.
Now, the Taylors, were they related?
No.
Just three Taylors.
Three guys named Taylor.
Yeah. I was looking
Andy,
to that.
John and Roger. No relation to each other at all.
I was wondering, because I was looking and it's like I didn't find that, and I was busy reading this story, and I'm wondering, is it in some of their videos? They've got a few different videos out there also. Little documentaries of different aspects of their performances and shows and such.
But yeah, no relation at all. It's kind of funny. They just all happen to be named Taylor.
Interesting. Interesting. So they started out. Now, where did they really find their first fame in the performing world? What year was that about?
Well, define fame. I mean, they had a nice album, a good album that came out. It was kind of post-punk, new wave. It was their self-titled album, their first self-titled album they had too. And it was He Won. And it was pretty much a UK thing. They didn't really hit internationally until they released the Rio album, which we'll talk about. And that's with Hungry Like the Wolf and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's when America discovered them, was 82, when that album came out. I'll show you some weird stuff. Like here, I've got some visuals. This is the first album. This is a UK pressing of the first album. And I don't know if you can see that or not. Right here.
Yep, there we go.
See the picture on it?
Mm-hmm. So that would have been about 1981, was it?
81. And then it was released in, it had a re-release in the U.S., in 1983 when Rio did so well, and they added a track on it and they changed it a little bit. So here's the same album for the US.
That one I recognize.
Yeah, this is the US release. This is different. They look different. They look very new romantic, as they call the fashion, and the tracks are a little different. They got rid of a track. I don't know if it's Tel Aviv or what they got rid of, and they added Is There Something I Should Know, which was just a single in the UK, but they actually put it on the first album for the US just to boost album sales.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it all started. And they did kind of their punk thing first, and then they eventually got into their new wave thing, and got their I guess foothold in with our synth pop stuff that we all know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it all started in the U.S. and in England as well.
Now they came onto the scene about the same time that MTV was really starting to launch and get going, in MTV's early days. How did the two kind of come together in that world of entertainment? I mean, how did they work together?
Well, they were just looking for content, obviously, content that would really appeal to young teens in the U.S. when they did the whole MTV thing. The interesting thing about all the videos, if you watch the videos from, I guess, primarily the Rio album, but sometimes from the first, a couple from the first album as well, they're very exotic looking videos. They're in places like Sri Lanka, and they're in South America, and they're just Africa. They're in exotic locations, India, whatever. But they were broke. I mean, they had nothing. They were being flown all over the world to shoot these promotional videos. But, and they had, people doing their costumes and clothing and whatever, wardrobe, and their hair and stuff, but they had nothing. I mean, they were just getting started, but it looked like they were these really cool international, cool guys, but they're just dudes from Birmingham primarily. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. I think that the early videos, those were obviously when we started to see them with Hungry Like the Wolf and others. Mm-hmm. And we'd have swore that they were a band from Australia more than
something. Yeah, it was all the Sri Lanka shots and India and
mm-hmm.
Tel Aviv, or where, just they were all over in these exotic locations getting these shots. But again, they had nothing. This was just something that their the label was doing, EMI over there, and their promotion guys just trying to really make them look cool. Of course, within a year or two, they were beyond wealthy, all of them, from album sales, which you could make money on back then, and touring as well. And they had yachts, and they were the jet setters. And to this day, I believe, like, if you're looking at like British tabloid, like right next to royalty, you'll see something about Simon Le Bon, or you'll see something about Nick Rhodes, because they're still like David Beckham kind of thing. They're the superstars over there. To this day, they're royalty.
Interesting. Yeah, you wouldn't think that it's been so many, 80, 90 to 30 some years.
Sure, but they're kind of like the Beatles. I mean, I've heard a lot of people, real reputable producers, musicians, label heads, they've said that this is the most underestimated band ever. Because let me just tell you from my experience with what this was. So at the time when, I don't know, 83, I guess, late 82, early 83, I was living in Oklahoma, of all places.
Mm-hmm.
We're only there for a few years, but middle of nowhere, town of 30,000 people. And my brother, he had this friend who had money. I mean, the family had oil money or whatever. And he ended up down in like Corpus Christi, Texas. He was down there for a while, like a year or two, and had all these experiences he came home with. Well, my brothers, he's 9 years older than I am, but his friends all kind of took me on as a little brother, and they would do things with me, take me for rides in their car. I liked cars and
mm-hmm.
tunes, and go get a Coke somewhere or whatever. They were just cool like that. Remember, his one friend picked me up, this brand new, beautiful car, whatever it was. And he was like, "Hey, check this out." And he popped in this tape. It's the first time I'd heard Hungry Like the Wolf. I'm like, wow. It's like, yeah, all the rock stations in Texas are playing this.
Sure.
It's rock stations. So they started out like with that. I mean, their introduction into the U.S. was as a rock band.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they might as well have been April Wine or whatever. They were that kind of thing. And then within 6 months, they were very much a teen heartthrob act. But initially, it was very much rock and roll, and it was cool, and the rockers accepted it until all of the teenage girls got hip to it, and then it wasn't cool anymore. You know what I mean? As soon as mom likes it or the teen girls like it, it's no longer cool for the testosterone boys.
Yeah,
who are in their late teens, late 20s, or whatever. But yes, and man, they've done so much stuff in the early days. It's interesting though. We've talked about 12-inch singles, and how today they're doing remixes. It's just what they do. If you want a club version of something, it's just basically it's remixed into a bit of a longer version of the song. But back in the 70s and early 80s, they didn't do that. they would re-record the entire track and make a longer version of it. So, like for instance, Hungry Like the Wolf, they were in the studio and they did the radio edit of it. They got a take of it. I'm like, okay, well, good. Now let's do a longer version of it. And they would literally record a whole nother version of the song, just a little longer.
Yep.
Now, what's interesting about that, and I have a lot of these night versions, so just sitting here, just as visuals. I don't know what this is. This is Careless Memories here. This is a cool one. One of my favorite ones right here. It's My Own Way, which is a really interesting one because the night version is a completely different version than the album version. It's actually a disco song. So the U.S. Big release of this with My Own Way on it was more of a tropical sounding, kind of typical Duran Duran sounding song. But this is full blast disco, and I love it. But anyway, it's interesting. Even tracks like Hungry Like the Wolf, if you listen to the radio edit and then you listen to the night version of the song, they are different recordings. There are different nuances in there. The vocals are a little different. The bass slaps are a little different. It's pretty neat. It's cool that they do that.
Yeah, and they were one of the first, I think, pop bands or that actually did some of that. But they were using, they were talking about it. They were starting the multi-track recording when they made their night versions, and they were doing some different aspects of that. So there was times where they were cutting the whole song differently, and times where they were actually doing a different remix of some of their songs, which was kind of cool because, as you say, before that, it was a whole new song each and every time.
Right. The first two albums, that's what it was. Once they got into the Seven and the Ragged Tiger album with the Reflex on it and all that, at that point, yeah, they were doing the heavy multi-tracking stuff, and they were just remixing the track more or less. But the first two albums, which were huge, by the way, internationally, huge. A lot of night versions. I think damn near every track off of each of the albums. I mean, I would say probably 75% of all the tracks on the albums got a single. They got a 12-inch. They got a night version. It was huge, just huge.
And there was one that's talked about in their bibliography there, or the biography, that talks about their night version. They've got it, and I don't remember what the name of it, but it was a night version's disc. It wasn't, I don't know if it was on LP, but it was on CD.
It's called the night versions. Yeah, it came out in the late 90s.
I think, about 99 is when it came out.
Yeah.
And looking on Amazon, there's some people out there who are selling a brand new copy of that unopened, hundreds of dollars.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I have it. It's got a cardboard sleeve on it, and it's got a hole cut out. When you put the CD in it, you can see their faces. And I destroyed the thing. It was in my truck, and I would just play it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely own that. It's good. It's just all the big night version tunes collected. Not everything, but a lot of them collected.
Yeah.
This set.
What's that?
It's a 2-disc set.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what I ended up. I found one. I think it was a used one that was in really good shape for like $10. But the one that was, there must have been a special version, and it's like, really, wow, that much. But Amazon, if once everyone else is sold out, you can always maybe sell something at $500. But
there's so much fun though. I mean, Duran Duran just released a singles collection. I don't know. It's a 3-disc set. I think they released it about 4 years ago, and it's even got more weird stuff on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is There Something I Should Know? That's one of my favorite Duran Duran songs. And when I play it, I like to drop the pitch about 3% because it just sounds better to me when I do that. It's not sped up. But I remember back in 1983 watching things. I don't know what the shows were, but it was some kind of show. You remember they used to do like, we're just having a musical guest tonight, and they just came on the show. Not Saturday Night Live, but things like that late at night. They would have just a musical guest that had nothing to do with the show would come on and perform.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, some of these little small, you see that in some of these little sports shows that are on after the news locally. And all of a sudden you've got a local band playing.
Well, they used to do a lot of those, and that was the big single, Is There Something I Should Know, the summer of 1983. And there was a version of that song that they played. There was like the song sounded normal. Then there was the bridge, and then it went into kind of the refrain, at the end, back in the chorus. And it was a key, like a little bit of a key change for the first couple bars. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful. And I looked for that for years, and I cannot find it to this day. The only place you can find it does. I have heard it. If you go on the official Duran Duran Vimeo on YouTube, the video for Is There Something I Should Know has that version on it. That's the version for the video that they're using. but yeah, there's so much stuff. It's the singles collection that came out was the first time like a radio edit of the night version of My Own Way came out. It was the first time it was ever available other than on the 12-inch. All kinds of weird, freaky stuff like that. So I love the band. I've always enjoyed them since I heard them for the first time. And I dive into it and check out the old stuff and the new stuff. I've seen them several times. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wanted to be John Taylor as a teenager and in my early 20s. I wanted to be John Taylor. He was just that cool. And now we have a mutual friend. It's kind of weird. I haven't met him yet, but we do have a mutual friend.
Is that a Facebook thing where you can see a mutual friend there?
No. A real mutual friend. Richard Blade. And is,
Richard would know. Yep.
Richard Blade and John Taylor are very tight. And every time I talk to Richard Blade, I'm like, one of these days, like, oh yeah, he's really cool. You just come over to his place. He lives in Santa Barbara or whatever. I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. I'll just come on out.
Yeah, I'll just pop in. Hey.
Yeah, I'm here for NAMM, dude. That's it. But yeah, it's kind of neat to hear the stories. And
the stories would be the interesting part, because as you're reading about their history and such, that as you mentioned earlier, they would be put an album out and then they would go on tour, and their tour schedule was incredibly hectic. I mean, you don't see things like that happening anymore. Album tour, just hand in hand.
Well, they were so huge internationally. I mean, they could just sell out arenas. They had an album called Arena. Right? They had a movie called Arena. Actually, it was a concert movie with a lot of things mixed in there from I don't know, Barbarella, I guess, the really bad Jane Fonda movie, which incidentally is where they got the name. It was a Duran, I believe, was the villain, but they changed it to Duran Duran. So they got the name. But yeah, tours, and they're still at it. They're still doing it. I tried to see them a couple of years ago, but Nick got sick and they canceled. But yeah, they're still out there. They're still active.
Now, are the still the five original? Because there were five original in the early '80s, and they were kind of dubbed the Fab Five, kind of a takeoff from the Fab Four of the Beatles.
Right. Well, it was pretty close. I mean, if you've ever been to England, you can drive from Liverpool to Birmingham in like 45 minutes. I mean, it's like they're real close to each other. England's tiny. I mean, it's not that big, but it's all Midland stuff, And there's a lot of stuff that came out of Birmingham. A lot of stuff. Black Sabbath came out of Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
Duran Duran came out of Birmingham, as did like Bananarama came out of Birmingham. A lot of just all kinds. Yeah, just like there's a lot of really cool pop music that came out of Birmingham, and rock too. Where were we going with this? Members. So you had the five original members, which Simon Le Bon, John Taylor, Andy Taylor, Roger Taylor, and Nick Rhodes. Nick is like the brainchild of the whole thing. He's the oldest member, as far as age goes. He's the oldest one of them all. But the guy, I've heard nothing but great things about him. Is just everybody who I know who knows him, and I do know a few people who know him, say he's just one of the nicest guys, just the coolest, most approachable man you'd ever want to meet. But he's kind of the guy, the music arranger of the band. He always has been. Simon's the lyricist. Nick is writing this music. Something Nick did just as a side project. Remember Kaja Gugu Too Shy?
Yeah.
That was Nick Rhodes. He produced that. He wrote it and he produced it. So he's pretty good, for that type of music. I mean, he was really on the front lines of that whole genre.
Sure.
You had the original members through the Seven and the Ragged Tiger album and Arena album. And then they split up into two different groups. One group, Nick Rhodes and Simon Le Bon, did the band Arcadia. And if you remember the song Election Day,
yep.
What's a Duran Duran song? It's like, no, it's Arcadia.
It sounds exactly.
Well, it's because of Simon Le Bon and it's Nick Rhodes writing. Yeah, so of course it's a Duran Duran song. And on the other hand, Andy Taylor and John Taylor, Roger Taylor decided, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go buy a farm somewhere. And he did. He bought a farm. But the other two Taylors, they got into another band with Robert Palmer called The Power Station. And that was Some Like It Hot and Bang a Gong. And the first time my generation really paid attention to Robert Palmer. Of course, he had things, Doctor, every kind of people. But the first time my generation was like, what?
Yeah, for sure.
Who's this guy? And then they were going to tour. They were going to do a big Power Station tour, but Robert Palmer's like, yeah, I got my own project going. I'm going to do, and he was getting ready to, blow up with Addicted to Love and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they never did it. The band was named after the recording studio that they recorded in New York called the Power Station. Yeah, and then they let's see, John Taylor, Nick Rhodes, and Simon Le Bon came back and they did the Notorious album together. They did Big Thing and then several other albums after that. And then they didn't all get back together until the 90s. And then they did it again recently, like a few years ago. The original members, including Roger, who bought the farm. He came off the farm and went ahead and decided.
Yeah, but 99, I think, is when Roger came back, if I'm not mistaken. Somewhere in that ballpark. Because it was time. He got the itch one last time.
They're in and out a lot. So,
yeah,
I mean,
it's interesting. You've got Simon and Nick, who are basically straight through.
And the there was an album called Medazzaland that came out in 2000 or 97. Had the tune on it, kind of Electric Barbarella, if you remember that song at all. That was just Simon and Nick. That might as well have been Arcadia. But those were the two last members who wanted. At that point, nobody else wanted anything to do with it. But Nick and Simon still wanted to make music, and they did. So, kind of Nick's band, really. It's, if you really look at it, it's the band belongs to Nick Rhodes.
And that's an interesting thing as you're looking through, and not only at Duran Duran, but other bands, as they evolve, and yet the band's name is still there. But it's like, okay, who owns it, or who's the heart and soul enough to keep the name going and keeping that? And in this case, Nick is that person. But
Simon's the voice, but Nick is the composer. He's always been the composer. Simon's been the lyricist. Nick's been the composer. And they all contribute. It's not that they don't, but those are the two consistents and the things that I feel really make their sound unique. So.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's talk specific songs for any applications that mobile DJs may have. As we talked a little bit about a couple of the albums so far, and there have been some hit songs. Are there any that, if someone's not familiar with Duran Duran, that they need to have in their collection for sure?
Well, you need to have Hungry Like the Wolf. That's the song you need to have. That is the biggest hit. That's the most familiar hit from the album Rio, right here. One of the coolest album covers ever. Now, do you know who painted this?
No, I do not.
Okay, this is an artist by the name of Patrick Nagel, and he was an artist for Playboy magazine. He did a lot of art for Playboy, and they commissioned him to do the Rio album. So a lot of people bought the album who were just art enthusiasts, because this is, if you look at Patrick Nagel's other work, it's pretty good, but this is one of the only Nagel girls where she's smiling, and that's pretty interesting. Did a lot, but they all kind of look like her if you Google Patrick Nagel. So even the art crowd was like, "Oh, we got to buy this," and they were hanging this on the wall because it was just a rare Nagel. He was a pop artist back then. Everybody was collecting Nagel stuff. So just on that alone, but this is an incredible album. I mean, just to listen to front to back. Hungry Like the Wolf is the tune that you need, though.
Yeah.
Another tune that might not be a bad one to have would be the Reflex. That one's pretty hot as well. And if you've got but Duran Duran, I guess we should mention this before I go any further. They haven't always just done the same thing over and over again. They've dabbled in other things. For instance, in the early to mid 90s, they were kind of on the alternative hook. They were doing stuff that you were hearing on alternative rock radio next to Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. And some of that stuff is kind of cool to have too. They did an album called Thank You, and it was all covers. And it's really good. It's a beautiful piece. But the one that you hear the most is their remake of Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel's White Lines. It's pretty cool. Like a hard rock version of White Lines. It's kind of a neat one to have around too. But yeah, I mean, I don't get a lot of requests for Duran Duran as a DJ. When I do get it, though, my go-to is Hungry Like the Wolf or the Reflex. Those are always my two go-tos because they're the most danceable.
They had a slow song, didn't they?
They had a lot of slow songs. They had a really nice song called Save a Prayer. That was just beautiful. Lonely in Your Nightmare was a nice down-tempo, slow song. Oh boy, The Chauffeur was kind of a risque thing. They did there's tons and tons. Tule Marlene, Skin Trade. I love the song Skin Trade.
Yeah,
It's off the album. Yeah, loads of ballads that you can absolutely use too. Save a Prayer is probably the one that everyone's going to flick their big lighter to. I mean, that's the really epic one that they did, you know.
And in 84, that would have put me with the song Wild Boys was released in 84.
That was on the Arena album, by the way. That was part of that was like the new single off of the concert album they did.
I'm trying to remember where, because that was one of the songs. I think I had my Fisher stereo at that time. And you know, I'd open the windows of my bedroom, one speaker in each window, and the basketball court was just outside there, and the neighbors got to hear Wild Boys.
Whether they wanted to.
There it is. Is that the night? 12-inch CD?
No, they weren't doing night versions at this point. This is it's all long, maybe Monster Mix, but I don't know what they're even calling it here. They have a couple of different versions of it. This is actually a German pressing, because I create dig when I'm in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought this in Germany. It's a German pressing of Wild Boys. I know I have a U.S. pressing somewhere here too.
Very cool. Very cool.
And I like fashion, just I don't know, fun stuff across the board. Whether you want disco dancey stuff or synthy stuff or rocky stuff or whatever, I think they got a lot to offer. I think they're a fantastic band. They've written some great material. They're a hell of a show to see live. Again, I've seen them several times. For saw them one time, and it was just kind of them, and it was like a pop thing, you know. I saw them another time. And they were like right alongside Dave Matthews Band. I mean, it was that kind of festival, and they still fit in there.
Yeah.
So they have a broad appeal that way.
Yeah, they definitely had a way their sound. They have a variety of different sounds where some, you know, Pitbull is Pitbull from the first time we heard him till today sounds the exact same, and he has no variety in what he does except, just going there. I'm going to say it, but yeah, you definitely hear a different sound, maybe not quite as distinct as Prince in some of his things, where it was such a change from album to album, except with one or two, that were in that album just to be the radio hit. But it's an interesting thing. Probably the part that was really interesting, you know, going through and doing all and reading, seeing the different songs and such that were released, was that whole video influence, the way they were attributed with changing music video culture, because prior to that, a lot of the music videos, if you watch the early ones, it was basically just, you know, it was like handy cams and the singers up on stage.
There's an NXS video, and I can't remember what the video is for. I think it's Just Keep Walking, and it's like a room, and they're shooting it like from the middle to the corner. And it's lined in garbage bags. You can tell it's plastic hefty bags, but that was the big production thing they did. Where, you know, they're Girls on Film, which features naked mud wrestlers, by the way, the long version of it. They're on a raft going down the river, the Amazon River, I think, in South America, and it's like visually amazing. It's like a film. It's shot on 35 millimeter, you know, it's not videotape or whatever. They really brought their game with that. That was part of the whole marketing thing for him. But, you know, really, because guys are in Birmingham. I mean, well, most of them are. If you've ever been to Birmingham, well, let me rephrase that. That's not going to mean much to anybody unless they've been to Birmingham. Mm-hmm. Birmingham, working class, it's very modest. It's a cool city, but it's not London. It's not New York. You know, Birmingham is... Cleveland. I mean, it's the second largest city in the UK, but it's not what you think of when you think, wow, you know, those guys are cool. They're from, you know, I don't know. They're from Dayton, Ohio. They're really cool, you know?
Yeah, because Dayton's a cultural
Right, right.
Well, Brian, we are up at our 30 minutes. We're going to shut down the stream here, gang, and put a wrap on this one, and we'll be back in a couple of moments. I just put the link in the YouTube chat here, and I think it's also in the Facebook chat. It's up at the top there. But we'll be back in just a few minutes with our Q&A time with Brian Red here in just a couple of minutes. So hang on, and we'll see you in a couple. And we've got to do that.